So, what we were discussing till now was about the generic security principles and technologies protocols that is actually available. So, we will look at with respect to these what are the components that are actually available inside the ARM processor, and what kind of features are actually made use of among the things that we actually discussed in the morning before lunch, right. So, the different security components, please understand, all these are actually part of the processor inside, right. So, there is nothing that we are talking external to the processor, and that is basically the beauty of whole thing. So, we have something called as a TrustZone architecture. The TrustZone architecture is basically helps to split up running of any application in what is called as a secure world and what is called as a normal world, right. So, when I say that I am running an application and the context is right now inside the secure world, that application is going to have only very restricted access in terms of what memory areas that it can access, whereas when it is running in the normal world, anything that has been marked for the secure world access alone will not be accessible to it, right. So, what is called as a HAB feature, high assurance boot feature, which is basically part of my system boot. So, we are going to take a look at it in detail of what this HAB is all about. It helps me to ensure that the image that it is getting booted right now, okay, is not something which has been compromised on, right. Then there is something called as an SNVS. SNVS stands for secure non-volatile storage, which has an internal security monitor, key storage and a real time clock. So, this is something which is actually going to be a non-volatile storage space that is actually available to the any kind of security application that is required to be running here. Because of the fact that it is non-volatile, it is going to be actually available across power cycles, number one. It has typically a coin cell operated battery with which it is able to provide the non-volatility, and then it is secure because of the fact that any kind of an attack that actually happens on my device, right, the processor is programmable to go ahead and delete the contents what is actually available as part of this area, right, which is essentially what security is all about, right. Suppose I find that my device that I have built is physically tampered, right, somebody had actually tried to open up the box. I actually have stored lot of confidential information like keys and all that as part of the SNVS. I do not want this area to be available for the person who has actually successfully opened it up, right. So, there are configurable registers which I can program inside my processor to go ahead and clean up this entire SNVS area on any of these events that has actually recognized, right. Then there is something called as a CAM. So, cryptographic acceleration and an assurance module with 16 KB of dedicated secure RAM. Now, the first A in CAM actually stands for acceleration. So, with whatever we have talked in the morning, and when we use the word acceleration right now, what comes to your mind? So, what is it that I am going to accelerate? For doing what? Yeah. So, not only encryption and decryption, but my entire gamut of security functionality. So, I want to generate a random number, I want to generate my keys, I want to encrypt, I want to decrypt, all this functionality. This particular CAM module basically helps me to accelerate. So, what does it do by helping me to accelerate? He has got the complete functionality implemented inside the processor, because of which any application that I am running at my higher at my device, right, need not really run all these computationally intensive stuff as part of my software, right. I mean, it is very intuitive for us to understand the moment I run it inside my processor, it is going to be definitely much faster as compared to running it outside, right. So, that is basically what this guy helps me to do. And then in an on chip one time programmable element controller with an on chip electrical fuse arrays. So, have you heard of a term fuse arrays before? Okay. So, what do we mean by a fuse array? Any idea? Or where have we come across the term fuse array? So, when you say something is fused, literal English meaning, what do you mean by that? Joined, right? So, the very fact of security, I would need certain memory locations in which I actually have written some values, and those locations I do not want it to be first read by outside. Secondly, I do not want them to be really being modified once I have written them, right. So, that is basically what we refer to as OTP, one time programmable. Okay. So, one time programmable essentially means that once I write on to that and then say boss I am fusing it right now, that means subsequent modifications to that is completely denied, right. So, inside the processor some of the functionalities can read the value, but there can never be any more modifications in those particular registers, right. So, that is basically what this part of my processor is helping me to do. And then there is something called as a CSU, the central security unit, that is the core unit that is very helpful whenever I basically want certain peripherals, right, to be allowed access only in a secure mode. So, we talked about the TrustZone architecture, where I was telling you an application can either run in a secure world or in a normal world, and when I am running in a secure world I would need as running as the application access to some very specific secure areas, secure memory areas, right. So, who is going to control access to those specific areas? That guy is basically the CSU. So, all these components that we are talking of here are different blocks inside my processor. So, that is basically the key that we will have to understand. So, these are not some things which are external to the processor, but internal to the processor, and every block, every functionality that we have talked about, because these components are inside my processor, are all available as part of my processor functionality itself, right. So, very broadly speaking, that this is how the whole thing is looking like. So, this is basically the accelerator and the assurance module that I talked about. Okay. So, all kinds of algorithms run here. So, DES, 3DES, AES, 128, AES, 156, RNG. What is RNG? Can you guess? So, I said something is required for generation of the keys. Random number generator, right. So, that is what I told. So, when you talk about acceleration, this acceleration is not only just plain encryption and decryption, right. So, I have a RNG portion which is actually used very rarely, only when I need to generate a new keys, right. The RNG is going to be actually made use of. Now, even this RNG functionality is actually available to me as part of the CAM module inside my processor, right. And then the SNVS, the non-volatile storage that I mentioned about, right. So, what is the zeroizable secret key? So, this is basically what I told, that the moment the processor detects that there is a event that is an auditable event. What do we mean by an auditable event? Some scary event that has actually happened, which I do not want it to happen, right. So, if that event has happened, what is the action to be taken? All was configurable. Suppose if I had basically configured it saying that on an event that is a serious event that has actually happened, I want this portion to be completely cleared, then the portion which is pertaining to the zeroizable secret key will completely be wiped off, right. So, other things like the independent controllers, then my MMU, then the CSU that is actually going to be providing restricted access to peripherals depending on whether this application is running right now in a secure world or in the normal world, right. So, sorry, right. So, essentially these are the different components that is there inside my processor as far as the security related aspect is concerned, and which part of it is being used for what purpose will be dependent on what is the state of my application currently and what is it actually trying to do, right. So, yeah, so the TrustZone security extension. So, as I was telling you, I am going to have a normal world and a secure world. When my application is actually running in a secure world, at that point in time, the application will have access to all the memory areas and the peripherals that are basically marked for being accessible under the secure memory. So, how is it going to be determined whether it is accessible or not, and that is where the CSU comes into play, right. So, the CSU is going to be basically either allowing or denying access to an application to certain memory areas and certain peripherals depending on whether this application is right now running in a secure world or in the normal world, right. So, when it is running in the secure world, it is going to have access to the secure memory area and all the secure peripherals. When it is actually running in the normal world, it will have access only to the normal memory area and the peripherals. So, out of my entire memory area, I would have actually configured a starting address to an ending address range, which I would have told is accessible only when the application is running inside the secure world, right. So, on a POR, what is POR? Power on reset. So, when you basically give the power, what internally happens is the power on reset circuit actually gets kicked off, right. Power starts coming in to the respective components, and then depending on what my configuration is, my high assurance boot might be running, right. So, we will see what is high assurance boot little later. So, after that is successfully run, the authentication has been successfully done, it is actually going to go into the secure world where my security kernel is actually going to be running, and the way by which this will be getting toggled between the secure world and the normal world is by executing a monitor instruction that is actually available inside my processor, right. So, this is a very unique instruction that is actually available as part of the ARM core, because the entire TrustZone functionality is something which is actually available inside the ARM core, okay. And IMX6 processor being ARM processor has derived the entire core and thereby is able to provide me this functionality, right. So, I will basically be executing the monitor instruction to swap myself from the secure world to the normal world and back again whenever I want to get into the secure world, right. So, now what do you see as the advantage here? Why do you think the processor through the TrustZone is giving you something like a secure world and something like a normal world? So, remember that it has the capability to access some very specific memory areas alone and very specific peripherals also. So, when you say peripheral, we all understand what we mean by that, right. So, what example peripherals can we think of? USB. Anything else? If I have a serial port, right, my display, right, all these are peripherals, right. What is the need for me to protect certain peripherals? Have you ever come across a situation where certain peripherals have to be protected? Any example scenarios? If you go to organizations, right, they will say that they will give you a desktop PC. PC will have all the peripherals because it is a standard PC that I will possibly get even in registry, right. But if I try to put up my pen drive into my USB port, it won't work. Why? Because the organization might have lot of confidential data which is pertaining to their customers, which they do not want to risk it out by letting the employees take it out on a pen drive and then take it outside the facility, right. In that particular example scenario, my USB port becomes a secure peripheral, right. But still I will want certain times when I want to access that peripheral, when they are when a very dependable application is running, right. That application will be doing a monitor instruction to go from the normal world, which is the default mode in which it will be running, to go into the secure world, do whatever job it wants to done, right, and it will be always have a watchdog associated with it. So, I cannot have an application perennially in a secure world, right. So, the moment the watchdog timer expires, that guy is going to be forcibly brought out back into the normal world, depending on the entire thing is configurable, right. So, the whole thing is configurable, and once the job is done with the secured peripheral, I will actually in my application come back into the normal world and my execution will continue running from wherever I have left, right. So, that is basically the essence of my TrustZone functionality. So, the whole TrustZone, please remember, as I told, is available as part of the ARM core. The IMX6 processor that we are talking right now is derived from the ARM core, it is licensed completely out of ARM core, because of which I have this functionality available as part of the IMX6 processor based device also, right. So, secure non-volatile storage, as I mentioned, provides a non-volatile real time clock maintained by a coin cell during system power down for use in both secure and non-secure platforms. So, because of the fact that it is driven by the coin cell battery, this storage area is actually available to me even when it is powered down in an offline manner, right. So, deters the replay attacks in time independent protocols such as certificate or firmware revocation. So, we already understand what is a replay attack, correct. So, handles tamper detection and tamper reaction to defend sensitive data and operations against compromise both at runtime and during system power down. Now, what do you mean by tamper detection? I gave an example. I have a device, right. So, the device is right now functioning, essentially the device is actually powered up, I am using the device either in a standalone manner or on the network remotely. Somebody is actually trying to come in and do some amount of tamper, right. Maybe they try to forcibly open, maybe they try to access some peripheral that they are not supposed to access by putting in some kind of a hardware part, whatever it is. Any of these kind of tamper events that I have detected, or rather I have programmed to detect, right. The moment it is actually done, so I have a very brief description of how this whole thing works later down. There will be a reaction that will be given out by the processor. What is the reaction that will be given out? Whatever areas that I actually have, the data that I have actually stored in the SNVS portion, right. So, that is basically what we saw here in this slide, right. All these will actually be wiped off clean, okay. My pins, my pin numbers, my keys, all these are actually expected to be stored as part of the SNVS area, right. So, the moment a tamper happens, this entire portion will be getting completely cleaned, because of which the device will possibly be in a non-usable scenario after that, which is essentially what I want, right. That is one form of security. Somebody has physically tried to penetrate my device, even at the cost of the device being completely unusable, I do not want that guy to get access to the confidential key data that I have, right. Maybe my ATM pins, maybe the encryption decryption keys that I am using, right. Any of that stuff I do not want him to have access to. So, the whole thing will actually be getting cleaned up, and also controls access to the OTP master secret key used by the CAM module to protect confidential data in the off chip storage. So, that again is actually stored inside as part of my SNVS, right. So, cryptographic acceleration assurance module, as I already told, two important things, acceleration and assurance is actually provided by this module of the processor. It has a secure hardware random number generator or a pseudo random number generator, right. So, this is actually available internally inside this particular module. Whenever I have to generate a key, this particular RNG or a PRNG piece of my processor is what is actually going to get into play to generate me the keys, because the source of that, as I mentioned, requires a large random number, right, and that is basically where my CAM actually comes into play. And then automatic zeroization of security parameters in secure memory. Whenever I have these kind of unwanted events getting triggered, this guy initiates the clearance of the entire portion, right. So, central security unit, I also talked about it, configuration of peripheral access permissions for those peripherals unable to control their own access permissions, configuration of bus master privileges for those bus masters unable to control their own privileges, and interfaces with the ARM TrustZone architecture to assign peripherals to secure world and normal world usage, right. So, as I was telling you, the CSU unit is the one that basically governs which out of the peripherals that I actually have, right. So, I might have a VGA, I might have a touch screen, I might have a USB, I might have a parallel port, whatever it is, it gets allowed when a particular mode of operation is currently being executed by the application, right. So, whether this guy is in the normal mode or whether he is in the secure world, depending on that, what peripherals are allowed access is governed by this particular component inside. So, I basically program the CSU to say depending on the peripherals and depending on the memory address ranges. So, if there is a memory address, a memory access to a particular address, right. So, that address, if it is basically part of my secure memory, the application can successfully access that particular location only when it has done a monitor switch into the secure world successfully, right. If he tries to access that particular memory address location as part of the normal world, it is something like a segmentation fault and the application will be terminated, right. So, I would basically be very paranoid thinking that an application is trying to access a memory location which has been configured to be part of the secure world, and I will only suspect the application right now because I am a secure device, right. So, I will not generally give the benefit of doubt to the application saying that boss maybe just try to do an access to this particular secure memory area by mistake or whatever it is, straight away the application will be shot dead only, right. So, then I will do the postmortem, okay, unlike our normal legal system, right. So, a person doing a murder, okay, in daylight will be arrested, will be put in prison for 15 years, he will be fed daily, right. After 15 years if he is taken to gallows, there will be a lot of hue and cry, how can you hang a person, right, it is against human rights and all that. But in security world, no questions asked, I will shoot you first, right. So, the process will be killed, then subsequently I might do a postmortem, okay, whether I was right in killing him or not. If I was right, what was the actual problem that he did? If I was not right, why did I make a mistake? All those postmortem exercises will happen, but first things first, right. So, when you have to do some things, do something, do not talk. So, the process will be straight away terminated, and then subsequently the postmortem, if at all possible, will be attempted to be done, right. So, that is actually taken care of by this guy, right. So, TrustZone watchdog feature. So, as I was telling you, there is a watchdog timer module. So, we all understand watchdog, right, processor, it is internally available, but this TrustZone watchdog is a special instantiation of the watchdog, where it is, as I told you, some guy cannot be continuing to be in a secure world perennially. If he tries to act smart, says that boss, I will execute a monitor instruction, go to the secure world and continue to be ever in the secure world, having thereby access to all the peripherals and all the memory area which is the part of my secure world, secure TrustZone watchdog will come into play. So, whatever duration I have configured, he will be forced back into the normal world, even if that guy has not initiated the transition back into the normal world, right. So, this interrupt is not serviced, watchdog asserts a security violation alarm to SNVS, okay. Now, you see this security alarm violation that you get here, right. So, this will basically be getting asserted to SNVS, but why is it getting to SNVS? So, what is so special about SNVS that this trigger alarm has to go to that component inside my processor? Because I want in this kind of a scenario also for all my keys and data, private data to be cleaned off, right. So, the moment this alarm is actually generated and it is received by SNVS, that guy will automatically take care to wipe off the data completely, right. So, see, when we talk of the security features that too inside the processor, every feature that you will realize is paranoid feature, okay. What do I mean by paranoid feature here? So, I will always be very suspicious. Okay. So, I will never be in the mode of being optimistic or giving the benefit of doubt or whatever it is, right. Anything that I come, immediate reaction, most of the times you will find me cleaning up the private data. Okay. I am perfectly okay with the device getting to be unusable state, but I am completely I have the biggest problem in my life if I basically try to have the data compromised by and accessible by somebody who is not supposed to access it. So, for all events you will find SNVS area getting cleaned off completely, right. Okay. So, with all these components, one of the first things that we will have to look at is what is the boot sequence that generally happens in the processor, right. So, the boot process begins with a pure power on reset as we saw. So, the ARM core begins execution starting from my on chip boot ROM. So, I have a on chip boot ROM that is there, and that code is actually going to start getting executed. Now, what does this boot ROM code usually do is, it basically checks the status of one register called the boot mode register. Okay. So, this boot mode register is going to tell me a few things saying what are the different boot devices that are configured and supported right now, and which out of those supported boot devices I am going to be right now booting from. Okay. So, where am I going to get my bootloader, right. So, we all understand the bootloader, right. So, boot ROM is going to give control to the bootloader, bootloader will give control to my OS, OS will mount my root file system, and then my system is all ready, correct. So, we are right now in the process where the boot ROM is going to be looking at different boot devices which has been configured, and out of those boot devices it is going to be expecting the bootloader to be coming in, right. So, serial downloader is there, support is there. So, I can either download it over USB, I could either typically download it over the network, I could typically download it over the serial port, right. So, there are different kinds of boot devices that are possible in which my bootloader can come in, right. So, once the bootloader comes in, I expect the OS image also to come in over the same media, right. So, if it is for example a USB, so USB OTG will be scanned to see if I have the image coming in from there, right. Then there is a device configuration data. So, device configuration data will tell me what are all the different peripherals that are actually available, and then a digital signature and encryption based high assurance boot. So, that is something which we will be looking at in detail now, and wake up from low power modes and wake up secondary core, right. So, what is this wake up from low power modes? Have you ever seen this in other processors? Why do you have this? So, what is a low power mode? So, what do I do in a low power mode? So, when it is less burden, what is the advantage? So, less power consumed, right. So, I have a mobile phone. So, every mobile phone is running Android only now, right. So, there is no fundamental difference between the features, because any application I can download it from Google Play. So, in a mobile phone, what is the primary differentiator now? Power. So, what is the battery capability, whether is it working for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, right. Have you ever seen a mobile phone with 2 weeks battery? Huh? Yeah. Non-smartphone is okay, talking about a smartphone, right. So, when it is going from a idle activity or a least activity to a very high performing activity, I have to move from a low power mode to a high power mode, right, wherein I will also possibly be waking up my other cores. So, I might be running only one core when I do not have really many applications, but moment I am flooded with more applications, I might have to actually start off the other cores also to make use of them, right. So, all these things are actually done as part of the boot ROM that I there. So, as I was telling you, I could really have the bootloader and the image coming in over the USB. So, when it is actually happen like that, the flow that will typically happen is I will check if the USB OTG, right, is configured. Essentially USB OTG is my register which will basically tell that I will need to expect my boot image to be coming in over the USB media, and then I have a programmable watchdog which I will set it for 32 seconds, and then for this period of time I will keep polling that particular media. So, after I have started polling for 32 seconds, if the image has actually started coming in, okay, the entire image need not have come in, but I should have started scanning the image inside my boot ROM, right. So, if it happens, then if I basically detect the activity, the enumeration of the USB device, the HID here is a hardware ID, right. So, USB has this hardware ID field with the for which the enumeration has to be completed, without which it will not be recognized as a valid device in the system, right. So, the enumeration is completed and then it is basically ready for the serial download. Suppose the activity is not detected, I will keep waiting for up to whatever is my watchdog duration configured, right. So, for this configured duration of time, if I do not really get the image over the USB port, I basically go in for a complete reset. Reset meaning this entire chakkar will restart again, okay, and it will be in a sort of a perennially hung state unless and until I get the image over this media, right. So, likewise for any other possible medium that has been configured for the boot image to come in, the same sequence will typically happen, a very similar sequence will typically happen there, right. Now, with these kind of different components that is there inside the IMX6 processor, we will take a quick look at the trust architecture and then see how something like a high assurance boot is really implemented, right. So, with respect to the trust architecture, we will have to understand where are the devices that are built out of this processor going to be typically made use of, right. So, what are the characteristics? It is going to be typically a client device or an end user device, right. So, it could be something like my mobile phone, right. So, it could run a ARM processor, IMX6 ARM processor based mobile phone, and that is basically what we have also actually developed right now in the networks lab of IIT, right. It could be typically a mobile. When I say mobile, it is physically vulnerable, right. What do we mean by physical vulnerability? Somebody can steal it, somebody can easily tamper it, right, not very big deal, because we are not going to be putting it in an environment which is going to be very secure, right. So, I just keep the mobile phone there, go outside and come back, within that time anything could have happened to the phone, right. It is connected with the IoT there, I have complete amount of remote thread that is possible, moment it is connected, right. My phone is continuously having 3G enabled or I am connected to my Wi-Fi, moment it is on the internet, a hacker need not be physically close to me, he can be totally away anywhere, right. And I have a rich and open software, right. The more open software that I have, the more software features that I have, more possible sources of attacks, correct. So, this is the kind of a device that you are going to be building on a processor like this kind of a ARM processor, okay. Now, for all these kind of threats, you have to have a solution with which all these threats will be able to be prevented, or at least you will be able to know that something like this has happened, right. So, what are the different security things that are happening? Percentage of breaches involving end user devices is doubling year on year, cyber criminals shifting focus from PC to mobile users, okay, because the PC market anyway is down. Instead of having one mobile, people are starting to have two mobiles, right. So, more attacks can actually happen on more mobile devices right now as compared to on standalone desktop PCs, right. Major Trojans continue to migrate to mobile devices. So, there are possibilities of Trojans and getting infected on a mobile device also, right. So, with respect to the different types of data or the assets, what kind of things could actually happen. So, if we look at the content, right, so whether it is a media or applications or whatever it is, the stakeholder of that is basically the content owner, and I can be subjected to a piracy attack, right. So, Dilwale is running in the movie theaters, I can get the entire Dilwale movie downloadable from YouTube or on a CD or whatever it is very easily, right, that is a piracy attack. So, somebody has been very smart enough to even record the digitized the HD version of it and then provide it to me, right. This in terms of the service access network or enterprise, the service provider is basically the person concerned about this, and I can be subjected to a fraud attack. So, fraud attack here could be impersonation, right, all the possibilities that we saw earlier. So, intellectual property owned or licensed. So, I might be owning intellectual property data, or my customer could have given access to me temporarily for doing his work. Either way, the stakeholder is basically the original manufacturer and espionage. So, espionage is basically spying, right. So, personal data, so all my identification details. So, you take a photo of your Aadhaar card on your mobile phone, because everywhere they are asking your Aadhaar card, okay, and you lose the mobile phone, gone, correct. So, anybody who has stolen your mobile phone, just by looking at your photos album of your mobile phone, can get access to your Aadhaar card number, okay, and he can quote that Aadhaar card number wherever he is convenient for him. He can quote his own Aadhaar card number wherever it is better convenient for him, right. So, privacy breach. So, these are the different things that could really happen. So, in terms of the threats, malware, so rootkits, trojans, viruses, all these things are possible, especially when it is a rich and open OS, right. So, Android open OS, anybody can download any application from Google Play. I do not know who has written the application, what that application is doing internally, no idea, with a very fancy name. I just go by the name and download, internally might be doing lot of things, okay. So, for example, how many of us are familiar with Linux? We have used, and you have something like a root user, correct, is an administrator user of your Windows system on Linux, right. So, there is a security thing that is given saying that the current working directory should never be set in the path of the root user, right. What is the path? What does the path variable denote? So, directory locations in which I want to find my executable which I want to run, right. Suppose let us say there is a program called ls, and it has been, we know what ls does. Ls basically lists the files, right. So, I had basically logged in as a root user on my system, just gone out for a cup of coffee, I have a very large screen log time period, I come back, but before I come back somebody has used my session window. What has he done? He has copied a program called ls into my current directory, cleaned up the history and went away. Now, I come back, I do ls, I am in the same current directory, right, but what will I be running? I will be running the program that this guy has copied. What is ls supposed to do? Ls is supposed to list the files, it will list me the files, but because it is his program, it also would have done something else in the back end, okay. He could have mailed the password file, he could have mailed all files to some ID which is otherwise non-readable by him on the system, right, but I would not come to know of it, because when I run ls I expect to see the list of files, I see the list of files. So, I am completely oblivious to it of that ls program has been compromised, correct. Now, that is basically what we call as a rootkit compromise. So, there are parts of my file system image which has actually been compromised and I do not really get to know of it, and I keep using it, which basically keeps sending confidential data out to other people who are not supposed to be accessing the data, right. So, then hacking, so reverse engineering or brute force. So, what kind of countermeasures are there? You do a secure storage, secure debug and an encryption. So, when we say secure storage, what do you exactly mean? How can you do a secure storage? When I store the data itself, I will encrypt it in store, right. So, unless and until the person knows the key to decrypt it when it is mounting, he will not be able to access the data, right. So, I have an SD card, so I store some data in it. When I store the data, I will have the entire file system itself created as an encrypted file system and then only store the data on top of that. So, somebody really forcibly takes out the SD card and tries to put it into another SD card reader and plugs it into his machine, unless and until that person has the password, that machine will report to him saying that this SD card is corrupted, right. They will not be able to even recognize that there is a file system on that SD card and that file system is also containing some data inside there, right. So, physical attack like bus snooping, glitching and all that is also possible. For that I basically have the tamper detection along with the secure storage. So, the moment I detect a tamper, right. So, the tamper I gave an example of a physical tamper, right, trying to somebody forcibly opening up the device or whatever it is, right. But I could also sense a voltage fluctuation. You understand what I am saying? When I am expecting, let us say, a 3.3 volt on a particular circuit line, if I find that I am getting a 5 volt before even it hits my component, okay, I will basically arrest it off, right. So, there my device getting faulty or the device getting conked off will be completely avoided, right. So, the key aspect here is the moment we say security, our minds are all generally tuned saying that okay, I will have a password access, okay. Password access, a first standard school going student will crack it, because there are dictionary cracker programs which are available which students of that age knows today to run, okay. So, you try to say that I have actually protected it with the password. 5-year, 6-year-old kid today, little bit smart kid will be able to run the dictionary cracker program, find out your password unless it is so complicated password, right, and have access to the data. We will have to get out of that mode, and processor like this IMX6 with the ARM core inside is giving us so many benefits that you try to do a complete end to end security, so that your device which you are building with this kind of a processor is completely secure against any kind of an attack, physical attack, network attack, just plain eavesdropping attack, right. All kinds of attacks are preventable, but we will have to take pains to make all these features and then program it, right. So, trust architecture features, trusted execution. So, isolate execution of critical software from possible malware. So, we have talked about it. Hardware firewall between CPU and DMA masters and memory and peripherals. Who does it? Memory and peripherals firewall, who is doing it? We just talked about it right now. Which component is doing it? CSU, right. So, high assurance boot, we will talk about it right now. Cryptographic accelerators, I have already told about it. Secure storage, hardware random number generation, secure clock, all these are the features that are actually available here. So, secure debug. So, you have a hardware debug, the JTAG platform that is actually available. So, protects against hardware debug exploitation for security circumvention, reverse engineering. So, we all understand JTAG. So, JTAG is basically the debug port that I have, which I use typically when I am building up a device, right, during the times of my development, right. But the moment the development is done and I still have a JTAG port available on my production device, what can be done? Because the JTAG port has actually got access internally to the entire peripheral, to the entire memory area, right. Somebody can use the JTAG port which I have put on my production device to sort of completely override my CSU and all those checks that I have actually put in, right. So, in order to prevent that, there is something called as a secure JTAG that is actually available, that is also part of this, and then the tamper detection, right. So, protects against runtime tampering. monitoring of various alarm sources like debug activation, external alarm like the cover seal getting off, software integrity check, software alarm flags, all those things are possible to be detected under the tamper, right.